Good morning. Today is the first Monday of December. Could you imagine that? Last week was the last Monday of November. Today is the first Monday of December. And it's very, very exciting. We're going to be talking about work and faith this morning. I think a lot of our listeners may be driving to work or driving from work. And so this will hit home, as they say. Okay, let's do this thing. Welcome to the Dear Church podcast, where we exist to fill your ears and your minds with the study of God to see the world as disciples of Christ. My name is Sam Yang.
I'm Eugene Kim.
So Pastor Eugene, how are you today, this morning? Tired, I assume, from the men's retreat? Tired but blessed. But today we're going to be talking about work and faith. And I know that we had a seminar actually a couple weeks back at our church with work and faith, and it was with 3 panelists. And that seminar kind of got me thinking, maybe we should do a podcast episode on a similar topic. And so we'll be asking some of those questions that were asked during the panel, but also a couple different ones as well. First, I wanted to start off with calling. Everyone always thinks, what's my calling? What's my calling? If you're in high school, one of the biggest questions that students ask is, what am I called to do? Am I called to be a doctor? Am I called to be a lawyer? Am I called to? And it's interesting, right? Because it's all called to be like these high prestigious positions. You're never called to run a dry cleaner. You're never called to, work at a supermarket. And I don't know why. But people always like, oh, am I called to be a doctor? Am I called to be a lawyer? Am I called to be a judge? All these different things, but you're never called to be these other jobs that are also great and glorifying to God as well. But I just wanted to ask, how do you know what your calling is? Especially because we've talked about calling to ministry, the internal and the external. Is there a specific calling to what we are supposed to be doing in our, for our careers?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you and I both had this, but there needs to be a light. So the clouds part, and there's a light
I didn't
that
have
kind
this.
of,
I didn't
it's
have
like
this.
a beam, a pillar of light.
I didn't have this.
Yeah, there's a cacophony of voices, and then you just pick one of those voices.
That's good. Yeah, that's happened to me.
Yeah. See, I knew that. That's why you went into med school and then not really, and then
Yeah.
went to seminary, but not really.
Oh, no, I did.
Well, I mean, to answer your question, vocation comes from the Latin word meaning calling. So that's why we have, that's why we, now we use the word vocation, like, what's your vocation?
Yeah.
What do you want to, what do you do career wise? That's what we mean, right?
Yep.
And so, but it really comes from the word calling. And that's what people really want to know. They want to know if the work that they do has some significance and meaning, if it fulfills some calling in their life. And I guess I can sympathize why people have a more grandiose, like, if it's a position that they're going to be called to, it's going to be a little more grandiose. It's going to be a little more, highly regarded, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I find that to be really interesting. How these callings are always regarding these quote unquote higher tier jobs, which is a label that the world puts on. But how do you discern that though? How do we know what our calling is? Like, for someone that's in finance, how do they know that that's their calling? For someone that's in architecture, and they went to architecture school for 5 years, and how do you know that that's your calling?
I think that's why when we did the Work and Faith seminar, or Faith and Work seminar, I forgot what it was called, Work and Faith seminar.
Yeah.
I did say maybe we could have like 30 like talks on this. It is complex. I mean, we have to go first from, defining what a calling is, and then secondly, how to find that vocation. Because people okay, first let's go to vocation. People believe that once you fulfill your vocation or your calling, then you will feel fulfilled, right? That's why people want to do it because
Yeah.
they want to
Yeah.
feel fulfilled. They want to feel like what they're doing is satisfying. Historically speaking, the word vocation was only really used for people in full time ministry, like, priests and stuff.
Yeah.
But now we've extended it to every single thing. And so I think we should understand maybe we could start off with, even though it is crucially important that you find what vocation you want to do, it's not something that that you could be stuck in or you
Mm.
have to be stuck in for
Mm.
the rest of your life,
Yeah.
right? You could be a doctor for a few years and then maybe you'll stop, like Ken Jeong.
Oh, famous guy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are others like him. Or you could be someone that was doing something and changed to another vocation, right?
Yeah.
So, questions that you probably want to ask are, what am I able to do?
Mm.
What am I good at? What do I like to do? And then marrying those two.
Yeah.
What do I like that I'm able to do? Right. And then, I think that'll help you get to the final question, meaning, what should I do?
So, kind of a follow up to that, kind of like what you were saying, we hear a lot of times do what you're passionate about. There's always these movies where, the main character can follow his or her dreams, or they can, just join the family business, which is more, more lucrative, like you make more money there. But, the whole message is follow your dreams. If you want to be a pop singer, go ahead, follow your dreams. Is there a sense in which we do that, but at the same time, there's wisdom in that, discernment in that? How do we distinguish what the world says we should be doing versus a godly approach to finding out or really discerning what we're called to do?
Yeah, I think that's why I mentioned before, because it's like, this is why, in America, a lot of men have or had midlife crises.
Yeah.
It's because they're not sure. Is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And because I've done it for so long, I don't think I could do anything else. So they go into this crisis
Yeah.
mode. And then now people understanding that you can go into a midlife crisis, people in their 20s get all anxious
Mm.
because they realize that what they're doing now is crucial in determining what they're going to do for the rest of their lives. Like this is like, foundational, building block-ish, that kind of thing. That's why they're always trying to find fulfillment in the current position that they're in. So it could be like Starbucks or McDonald's, or it could be at an entry level position. How can I continue to move forward so that I can move forward to fulfillment? But I think it all stems from that fear too. Uh, am I going to be doing this when I'm 50, 60, 70 until I retire? And if I'm not, then, aren't I wasting my life, right? I don't want to waste my life. How sad would that be if I spent like 10, 20 years of my life doing something that absolutely has nothing to do with what I'm going to do with the rest of my life? And how good would I have been if I had figured that out early? So it is like, it can be a seed of anxiety for a lot of people. But I think more importantly, what we probably want to do is, make sure that we have wisdom and discernment. Um, you want to discern well, and that's why we need to ask the questions. What are you good at? What do you have the opportunity to do? I get that you should be whatever you want to be, that follow your dreams, no matter what it costs, thing is out there. But is there something that you want to do, that you're passionate about, that you're
Yeah.
actually talented in? And
Yeah.
are there openings for that position? I mean, you could want to be something really badly, but there could be zero positions open. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So, like, for example, could be in our church. Maybe you really want to be a full-time minister for the church gathered and scattered, but we only have 5 positions open, and those 5
Mhm.
positions are filled.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter how much you want it, but if you're much more capable than, let's say, I don't know, I don't want to name any names.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. because you're gonna name me, and I
No,
know
no,
this for a
no.
fact.
I wouldn't name you. Let's just give a completely like random name. Let's say there's someone named Samantha, right? And this person that wants to be part of the staff is so much better than Samantha. And that's why I always joke we should have like a drum off to see who's the
Oh
better
yeah,
drummer.
Samantha plays drums coincidentally.
Coincidentally. I mean, there are complicating factors. It is kind of it's not just simply black and white.
Mm.
And that's why it can kind of get, you know, stressful.
Yeah,
It can get burdensome. But I think that's why we got to start with the simple questions. Ask the simple questions. What do you like to do? If you have no idea what you like to do, then start with the question before. What are you able to do? What are you decently good at?
mm,
What can you develop, right?
hmm
And if you're like, I don't have anything, that's why you went to school to develop these skill sets.
yeah,
Which is, I usually rail at like Pastor Paul and the other
Mm.
elders about how useless our colleges are becoming because they're not equipping anybody with skill sets. They're
Yeah.
just equipping people to, I don't know what they're equipping people with. Like what have people gotten out of their 4 years in college? People come back with, I made friends. I had the best time of my life, like
Yeah.
socializing. It's like, what? And so if it's not a really specialized major
Mm.
or, like medicine or engineering, one of the STEM like fields, then what are you really doing in college? What skill sets are you developing? You really need to ask yourself that. And so you're not wasting your time in college,
Right, right.
spending a bucket load of money. Develop the skill sets. If you
Mhm.
don't have any skills, then you need to come under somebody that can teach you skills. In your case, it would be an elder who teaches you how to be an elder, right?
Yeah, yeah,
If you want to be a plumber, you need to go through an apprenticeship, right?
Yep, yep.
And so if you want to be, let's say, a car maintenance guy, you got to learn from another car maintenance guy that's better. Like, what do you like to do? What do you like?
hmm
So I think in the confusing part about that is because of the internet now, we almost have, seemingly at least, seems like we could do an infinite number of things, right?
Right.
There's so many opportunities. How do I know
Yeah.
this one? That's why the joke of a cacophony of voices and you just picking one.
Yeah.
That's why I made that. But it really feels like there's like a million things saying you could pick me. So how do you know that one's the right one to do?
Mm.
How do you know?
How do I know?
Yeah, how do you know?
Yeah. So I think, alongside that, I have a question for you too. I think just like you said, wisdom and discernment. I feel like that seems to be the underlying theme here.
I mean, I think where we have to start. We have to start with understanding that when you make decisions and you make them out of like an anxious heart, you
Yeah.
usually almost invariably will pick wrongly. Don't
Mhm.
do it out of anxiety. Don't become a doctor because, someone pressured you, or a lawyer because you feel like it's a great thing to do. It's an enviable position or something like that.
Yeah.
And your parents can boast, and that makes you happy, that kind of thing. A lot more Asians tend toward that.
Yep,
A lot,
yep, yep.
A lot more non-Asians tend toward, what fulfills me, what makes
Yep,
me feel
yep.
good, right? Make sure it's not only about you either. That's where the wisdom and discernment come in.
Mm.
So in prayer, you understand that God is looking for obedience, no matter what field you're in. And so when you are obedient in the small, He's going to raise you to the big.
Yeah.
And then you can continue to stay obedient. I think that's the primary thing. Not to downplay exactly which vocation to take, but if we get that primary thing down, then you will alleviate a lot of stress and anxiety that you'll have about your future.
You brought up something earlier that I thought was really interesting and piqued my interest. And you talked about how maybe some of these questions are based in this idea of purpose and fulfillment and meaning. And I'm just wondering, is there really a job? Like, is there really a job out there for you that will just satisfy your desires for fulfillment and meaning and purpose? Or is that really just kind of like a fairy tale type of thing? Like, is there really a job out there for you?
I think it's about finding out what you like to do. If you
Uh,
find out what you like to do, find out what you're good at, the positions will be open.
mm,
So the job is not the ultimate end. So if you, I don't know if anybody really thinks like that. Maybe they do. I don't know.
yeah,
Maybe it's this one job that everybody's going for. And if you do
right.
that, you're not gonna really understand the whole thing behind, what work is. Adam didn't farm because he needed to be a farmer. He was a farmer because he farmed,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like, what do you want to really do?
Mm,
Ask yourself that. What do you want to do in life, Sam?
me.
Antha.
I don't know for Samantha, but for Samuel, I want to preach the word.
And so when you, let's say, for example, you want to preach the word, you want to do it regularly, you want to, be affirmed by the congregation, you want to go through all these steps, right?
Yeah.
And so if you like doing that, then you will prepare yourself, you'll be
Mm,
good at it, your ability will go up, your passion for it will go up. Um, and then I think it'll slide into an open position. But you can't just want to be a pastor. You
yeah.
can't just end with, I want to be a pastor.
Hmm.
And I'm afraid a lot of people think like that,
Hmm.
which is weird. What are you good at? Are you good at managerial tasks? Are you good at preaching? Are you good at communicating? Are you good at any of these things? Because
Hmm.
that's what a pastor needs to be. They need to be good at
Right.
all those things.
Right.
If you're not good at them, why do you want to be a pastor? That kind of
Hmm.
thing. So those are questions that we should be asking, because if you flip it around, then I think you're in for a big doozy.
Mm,
It's just not going to work out. You'll be disappointed. But yeah, if you love preaching the word of God and people like listening to you,
yeah.
right? Because you might love preaching and maybe no one likes to listen to you.
Hmm.
It's like having a podcast and having no one listen to the podcast.
Yeah. That would be tough.
Now,
So I think, we should ask our listeners to please subscribe and give us 5 stars, because it helps.
we have a subscription fee to help us out.
No, I don't think yet. I don't.
No, we're fully funded by CGS. So
Yeah, very true.
yeah, so we don't need to ask for that yet. Anyway, so when God asks, so people always want this like Moses experience and things like that. The burning bush experience. God goes, okay, I want you to go. So he already has this vocation given to him. But I think what people tend to, leave out of the equation, maybe not entirely, but for a majority of the part, is he was raised
Mm,
to that point. It was 80 years, right? That he was raised to that point until he got the burning bush calling. So for 80 years, God had been training him. He knew how to, I don't know, be a shepherd. He knew royalty. He knew all the Egyptian customs. He knew what it was like to travel in the wilderness because he literally was there for 40 years, that kind of thing. He knew all these things, right? One thing he couldn't do was the speaking part, right?
mm,
Which God said, I will be your mouth. So there are places that we can get to where God will stretch you. However, I think the point that we want to hold on to here is, what has God been training you in? What do you see your life like, you know, trajectory?
yeah.
What is it going toward? And so I do believe that God certainly takes people's aptitudes, because he's the one that gives it to them, into, their vocation.
A lot of conversations that I've had, I think, uh, stem from a place of this individual thinking, my job is kind of meaningless. Um, it's simply a means to an ends. Or it's a stepping stone to get to the next promotion, to pay for X, Y, and Z. And granted, there are people that are passionate about the things that they do. But oftentimes, what I've seen, especially in corporate America, is that the work that they do is simply a means to an end. So what I want to ask is,
Your cog in the machine,
yeah, you're a cog in the machine. And so what I want to ask is,
desk jockey.
oh, that's the thing. desk pop. But yeah, I've never had a desk pop. However, um, I'm just wondering, could you just give us perhaps maybe like a biblical view of what our job is supposed to be? Is it only simply a means to an end? And so how should we view our jobs and our careers from a biblical lens?
Well, if we start with what are you good at, what do you like to do, what are you
Yeah.
able to do, are there positions open? I think we would recognize that after your 4 years in college or
Hmm.
whatever,
Hmm.
however long you took in school, it's not the end of your education and growth. It's not the end of your search. I am just, I am just mourning the fact that our colleges provide almost nothing for,
Yeah.
especially the liberal arts.
Oh, yeah,
They
yeah, yeah.
provide almost nothing for our youth now, but it doesn't matter. You got a liberal arts degree, great. But just don't think that after 4 years, you're done. You should be complete in your training,
Mm.
your growth. That's absolutely not true for any field, even if it's specified, like let's say the education field.
Yep.
You trained, you got your master's in education. It's not like you're perfectly suited to now teach kids. You'll learn as grow. You'll learn from other teachers before you. You'll
Hmm.
learn in your school. You'll continue to learn. Um, I would think it's very, very. It's a it's an unwise statement to say like now that I have my master's or PhD, whatever, I know everything about a subject.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that would be pretty unwise. It's like saying if Samantha, or no, let's just say Sam. Let's say this person named Sam
Oh.
got his master's in divinity, and now he really thinks he's a master
Uh-huh.
in divinity.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be foolish.
That would be crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard you say that though.
Never.
Never.
Yeah.
Never. Or maybe that's a lie. I shouldn't lie on this podcast. Um, but that would be foolishness. You would think that these kinds of training helps you acquire skills and talents so that you can be more competent
Yep.
in the skill set that you're trying to, raise the levels that you want to go up. I think when people go from job to job, the trap is they're never increasing in their skill set. It's only so that they can get a bigger paycheck,
Mm.
but not really personal character or even the skill set. It's just for that resume,
Yeah.
so that they
Yeah.
can get that skill. So no one's really passionate about what they're doing. Other than let's say, manipulating the system that they believe that they're part of to get a higher paycheck, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
That then that's why I think it wouldn't be a surprise if you go through a midlife crisis because for about 20 years you've been in the workforce and you have nothing to show for it except
Mhm.
maybe a higher paycheck,
Mhm.
maybe a more padded resume, but character wise, skill wise, like you would not be able to survive, right?
Yeah.
Other than living in that corporate system.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why people are so upset. Maybe that's why people are so discontent.
Mm.
But, that's why we go back to wisdom and discernment. What are you doing in your off time? What are you reading? So I'm going to give you a flip side to this. This is
Okay.
why it's a little complex. I heard that one of the best entrepreneurial, it's just business, small business owner ships that you can have is dry cleaner. Well, a dry
Uh-huh.
cleaner told me this
Okay.
because it's one of the few jobs and the only job maybe in his mind that you work and then when you close at 5 or whatever time you close, you don't have to think about it again. Whereas
Yeah.
all these other jobs, you take your work home.
Uh-huh,
So he
uh-huh.
loved that because he really wanted to be an elder of a church, which he was.
Yeah.
So this is an elder of a church that I was talking to. And so he was able to shut off at 5 p.m. and
Okay.
then just, really do his passionate stuff.
Yeah.
And so I am a little conflicted about stuff like that. I don't think that's perfect. But because this person's older, I do want to take in wisdom that this person has. So I don't simply want to look at it from, the wide-eyed, naive point of view where you're like, I want to do it. If it's not something I love, I don't want to do it. Like the generation before us, especially if you're immigrants, the
Yeah.
generation before us, nobody liked what they did. They did it so that they could raise their family, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now we feel like we're entitled to doing what we like to do, you know, forget the family. It's about me, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. This was, I had conversations with my friends, and when they were having kids, they would say to me, I want to make sure that my kid knows it's not about them, and the parents will do what's in their best interest. And I was like, whoa,
Hmm.
I don't know any parent that thinks like that. Wait till
Hmm.
you have a kid and say that again.
Mm.
And obviously they didn't, but we really grow up in this thing where we're really boxed in. We're in this kind of bubble, a generational bubble, where we think like we have to do what we like to do. We have to like what we have to do, that kind of
Mm.
thing. Otherwise,
Mm.
we're not going to do it at all. And I don't think that's entirely the case. Sometimes you got to suck it up and you do it. But my point is, you should like what you do, and
Hmm.
you should be apt in what you do. I
Okay.
think those are basics.
Yeah.
Like you should develop your skills, but it shouldn't be like, man, I am now I don't know, insurance claim agent. I just
Okay.
thought of something,
Yeah.
but insurance claim agent, and that's my vocation. That's the ultimate call to my life. It's like,
Yeah.
that's weird. Who thinks like that? No one
Yeah.
thinks like that,
Yeah.
nor do I think you should. But I bet these insurance claim agents are like doing these things so that they could get a paycheck so they could feed their family.
Right.
But but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't increase in their skill set. It doesn't mean that they shouldn't like what they do. I think those things should be there.
Hmm.
But that's, I think, the whole generational thing where we see it so black and white that you have to fulfill your call in this job right now. Otherwise, you're not being true to yourself. Um, but then by doing that, you're going to forego a lot of opportunities for growth and being stretched.
Mm.
Because how do you know what you like now is what you're going to like 10 years from now? Because how many times has what you like now changed in the last 10 years? Probably changed a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, again, in that sense, it can be complex. But if we start from that very basic foundational aspect of you should be wise and you should be discerning in what you're doing,
Mm.
it really will help going forward. And that's why, I don't think I can say like, oh, Sam, you need to be a this.
Hmm.
I think Sam, to be honest, could easily be, anything he wants. He could be a janitor. He can be a barista.
Which Sam?
I don't know,
Oh.
whoever Sam is.
Um.
But the realistic part comes in when I say, quote unquote, you could be anything you want. It's obviously not anything you want, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
You
Right.
weren't born here, so you can't be president of the
Yeah.
United States.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I was born here, but I still can't be president. That's
Why?
that's not a realistic goal.
Oh. Oh. Oh.
Yeah, I mean there are some realistic like realities that we have to face. Um, Nor do I ever want to be president. That's
Mm.
crazy.
Yeah.
I would never want that job. But those are things that I think we need to be reasonable in assessing our skill sets, our abilities,
Mm.
what we are capable of doing. So yeah, no, I don't think you can be, let's say right now, I don't think you could be a lot of things. Could you be in the future? Maybe, but probably not a lot of things. So you actually don't have an infinite number of things that you could do.
Yeah.
But there are, a good number of things that you could do. Which ones are you going to do, and which ones are going to help you continue to raise your skill set with the
Mm.
options that you have?
Mm.
And so that's why continuing to grow in wisdom and understanding and discernment is so important for the believer.
As we're working, as some of us are going back into schools, as some of us are going back into our office buildings, I guess in the workplace, how can we be a better witness to those who are around us? And how do I handle situations that might be against our faith? So, for example, um, giving our pronouns, is this something that we should be doing if people ask for it, if our bosses ask for it? Calling other people by their preferred pronouns. knowing that their pronouns are actually not who God created them to be, or even calling other people by their preferred names. You know how when people may transition, they would have a different name. If we know that they transition, should we be calling them by their original name, by their new name, even if we don't support it? Like, how do we navigate these types of situations as a Christian and at the same time be a good witness?
Yeah, obviously it's going to get harder. It's not going to get easier unless the whole country and nation repents. We're just going to move down this, you know, this trajectory of eventual implosion and destruction. I mean, there's no other way to think about it because we're continually going away from God's word, his precepts, his laws. Um, and then all the things that we're bringing up now is like anti-biblical. It's anti-Christian. It's anti-nature, though. But it's like anti-natural law. But, you know, pronouns, there's more. Like even before pronouns, people weren't like allowed to talk about their faith because people reported them to like HR saying, I was offended this person talked about faith in the office. It doesn't belong here. Separation of church and state and things like that. So it wasn't easy before. It's only going to get harder is the point. It's only going to get harder. If you want to discern how to navigate specific stuff, then I think that's where wisdom will come in. And you'll know when the time comes if people go, give me your pronouns. And then you choose not to, which is one of our members did that, right? He chose not to give his pronouns, and then everybody looked at him weird. He told me during that Zoom meeting, whatever it was. But it's going to be there. There's going to be pressure to cave into whatever demands society has placed. And you may lose your job. You may lose your job. You may never get a promotion. Those things are that may be worse than not maybe worse than losing your job is to sit at the same place for like 10 years because they're never going to promote you because you have some kind of red flag. Because you didn't say your pronouns. Like it could be, Now, most recently, like I saw a video of some Microsoft presentation where every single presenter gave their pronouns before the presentation.
Oh, interesting.
So it's going to be, before they gave a talk on Windows, these people will come up and give their pronouns and things like that. And so it's there's going to be societal pressure. There's going to be pressure from your company to cave into their demands. But yeah, we all know that saying pronouns is ridiculous because if you're a man, you're a man. If you're a woman, you're a woman. You don't need to state your pronouns unless what you're doing by stating is to tell people there's an option of not being a man if you don't want to be when you're a man, or not being a woman when you don't want to be when you're a woman, that kind of thing. And so now we even use terms like biological male or biological female. Oh, a man's a man, female's a female. It's in our DNA, but it's in our spirits. I mean, it's just who God made us to be, right? And so when you face things like that, do it prayerfully, do it wisely, do it because you're standing up for the faith, not because you just want to stir up the pot, but also do it because you want to be a Christian witness. And people may get angry. So I don't want people to confuse saying what I'm saying with you don't want to be offensive because you just want to be winsome, period. No, that's not the case. The case is, winsomeness isn't always caving into people's demands. That's not winsomeness. Winsomeness is doing something in a wise manner that takes people a step back, even if they were to disagree, right? And so, I would never say my pronouns because look at me, like listen to my voice. It's very clear, right? It's one of those things where if people are asking you to compromise your faith and the very tenets of what you believe in, then you're going to have to stand up for it. Otherwise, you don't really believe in it. Then you'll know. I mean, we'll know because the sifting is here. Not coming, it's here. So people are going to be sifted. Do you really believe in the tenets of the Word of God, or is it just something that you can also that you believe is malleable, that you can shape and shift to whatever society demands?
We talk about being a witness to those who are around us and loving our neighbor, which also, is witnessing to our neighbor, because if we truly love them, we would um, preach the gospel to them. But I'm wondering, is that the only way that we can be a witness to those who are our coworkers, by preaching the gospel, which is, almost frowned upon today in the workplace, not allowed in certain places. So how can we be a better witness to those who are around us? And does it explicitly have to always be preaching the gospel to them?
People, if you want to preach the gospel, you look for opportunities, right? You want to be a
Yeah.
preacher, you look for opportunities. And when the
Hmm.
opportunity comes, you're prepared.
Mm.
You're going to prep as much as you can. Right? You're not gonna, if you really wanted to be a good preacher, and I go, you know what, Sam, why don't you give a short Devo? Because you're not an ordained elder, you can't do it on Sunday, right? That kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So why don't you do a short Devo on our prayers, and it'll be 20 minutes, and you could do it 3 weeks from now.
Uh-huh.
If you go, oh, awesome! I've always wanted to be a preacher. I'm preparing for it, and then you literally do no preparation.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you're going to be pretty bad.
Yeah.
Or you're going to be good in the sense where maybe you just will push through natural talent. And we saw
Yeah.
a lot of sports players who have natural talent, but they'll never amount to the NBA because they
Mm.
didn't practice, right?
Mm.
And then there are people who have an incredible work ethic
Yeah.
that also have talent, that have succeeded, that
Yeah.
really, rise through the ranks. But yeah, if you want to preach, you want to evangelize, you want to do these things, then prepare yourself. Like, read the Word of God, study, meditate on it. Look for opportunities, because it'll just come out in your conversations. It just will.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe so someone hit my car when it was parked, right?
Yeah.
And I told you this story, but someone
Yeah.
hit my car when it was parked. Last year, a tree fell on it when the wind was really heavy. And the year
Yeah.
before, someone else hit my car. So
Yeah.
every year, I'm going to this body shop
Yeah.
to fix my car.
Yeah.
And so I went again because someone hit it while it was parked. I don't have a camera system in my car, so I have no idea who did it. So
Yeah.
I have to just pay for it. And I saw the guy, and it's like, yeah, I'm here for my annual checkup, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And he laughs, and he and I got to talking. He's sharing some crazy stories about other cars who get into accidents and things like that. And in the end, he shares with me, hey, I think you should go to church.
Oh, yeah.
Because all these bad things are happening.
Yeah.
You should go to church. Now, I'm not saying like his connection is really theologically sound.
Right.
But I think it's sound in the sense where when bad things happen, people want to look for meaning and reason why.
Uh-huh.
And meaning and reason why come from God.
Uh-huh.
So going to church will help you find that meaning.
Huh.
And I respond, I was like, bro, I do go to church. Right?
Yeah.
But he was able to, my point is, he was able to insert that in our conversation about cars and accidents.
Uh-huh.
If you're looking for that, if you're praying about it, the opportunity comes up, you're going to take it, is my point.
Yeah.
And so I was ministered to by auto body mechanic.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so those are things that I'm always surprised by, and I'm very happy with. And he was a little bit shy in mentioning the church part. He
Mhm,
kind of just wanted to it was really very meekly done, but he
Yeah.
still did it. And I wanted to encourage him. And so we talked about church a little, about me going to church and things like that. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, man, you really got to go to church.
Yeah.
He became more adamant as time went on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you really want to be able to be prepared for when the
Mhm.
time comes. That's all.
Thank you for that. I'm very encouraged by your encouragement. By you being encouraged, I'm encouraged. We talked about work, importance of work. How do we balance work, family, and church? I think from work, we hear you need to, work overtime. You need to do your best. From church, we hear, you need to serve the Lord. And from family, we hear, you need to be here for your family. How do we balance all three? How do we prioritize the three? What is the correct way of viewing this?
Yeah, I think, I think a lot of things about this, but it's not just work. It could be marriage. It could be in any kind of relationship that you have.
Yeah.
People are always asking, like, how do you balance things? Well, what happens when you have a kid? What happens when uh, they get older and they need to save money, things like
Right,
that
right,
for
right.
college. Um, I'm not sure if balance is the right word. So
Hmm.
this is what I, say a lot. So there in our life, so you're just one person. It seems as though there's a lot of tension because a lot of these other responsibilities are pulling at you.
Yep, yep.
To be a good father, to be a decent husband, to
Hmm.
be a good worker, to be a good friend.
Hmm.
To be a good boyfriend.
Oh,
Yeah, whatever it is, right?
yeah.
And so all these relationships are pulling at you. And so how can you like manage these relationships without, that tension being so strong it's just going to give and it's going to break, right? So people think it's about this nice balance where you're like in always in some kind of zen state. State. I don't think so. I think yeah, there's going to be rough times, and I think there are going to be difficult times, and sometimes a certain portion of your life will demand more time, energy.
Yeah.
Like let's say you have a newborn soon, and then you're just not going to have the same amount of time that you had that you wanted to, get better at golf. It's
Right.
just one of those things,
Right,
and
right,
it's a
right.
reality that people have faced, and people are going to face. It's just that's what it is,
Hmm.
um, and that's where wisdom comes into play. You find out what your priorities are, and then you adjust the energies and the skill sets and the talents that you've developed to match that. And it will be different with different people because circumstances are different, but also people's aptitudes are different. Some people
Yeah.
are just going to be more capable of handling like five things than another person who gets really stressed with just one thing.
Hmm.
So maybe God is going to increase your aptitude from one to two by stretching you because you're always just this tunnel vision person that can only concentrate on one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And he's going to stretch you to do two. Maybe if you have five, he's going to stretch you to do 10,
Hmm. Hmm.
Whatever the case is, you really want to handle it where you revisit what your priorities are, you lay that down, and then that will be challenged. Like when you set up priorities, it will be challenged 100%, right?
Yeah.
And so when it's challenged, will it face up to the test? Uh, will it survive those priorities? And if it doesn't survive, maybe you really didn't have that as a priority, or maybe those priorities are wrong. Who knows, right?
Mm.
But that's why the test is important. And so those are the things. Maybe you will have a newborn, and instead of like raising the kid, all you will do is play Tamagotchi or something,
What
or
is Tamagotchi?
it's like this virtual
Is it the
raising
little egg thing?
baby egg thing.
Oh, oh, I love those things.
So there was a story about this couple who had a baby, and the baby died of neglect, malnutrition because they were too busy raising their virtual kid.
Wow, that's crazy.
I mean, that's a true story. That's
Yeah.
it's just the world we live in, where
Yeah.
people's priorities are so messed up,
Yeah.
so beyond the pale
Mm.
that we have these horrific things happening. Right?
Mm.
Yeah, video games is a big thing.
Mm.
But yeah, maybe if you don't have them that set, it will be challenged. Like you asked how I balance it, but yeah, get your
Yeah.
priorities straight, and pray for strength that you can fulfill the priorities, and then you'll be able to do well.
So I guess then my follow up to that would be, what should our priorities be? And not saying, I want you to set the priorities for every listener that we have. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, there are times where, we go to church and we say, hey, how come you couldn't make it to this or that? And say, oh, I had work. Or, with like, with your family, like, oh, I had church, I had work, I had this, I had that. And so it seems like they kind of invade each other's space to a certain extent. And of course, that's using the balancing language of a zero sum game, right? I learned that from your sermon. Anywho, um, so I guess how should we, prioritize this? How should we have the wisdom and discernment to do this?
Yeah, your capacity is not zero sum, to that degree where God can't increase it for whatever reason He wants to. He can if He wants to. He increased Moses, like we talked about. But I find it what intrigues me is family, like for people in our church. I don't know about anybody else, but people in our church, I feel like families tend to say to our church members, "Wow, you spend so much time at church."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's a thing.
Yep.
And then people in that are working, people are like, "Wow, you spend a lot of time at church."
Yep. Yep.
So the families and the workplaces of CGS members may think like, "Wow, is this a cult or something like that?"
Yeah.
Because they spend an inordinate amount of time in church where they're there Sunday,
Mhm.
they're in their smaller groups on like Wednesday.
Yeah.
They have morning prayer on Saturday.
Yep.
That's basically it, though. I mean, there's other activities that you could do, but that's so much. But for me, it's like, wow, it's so little. If
Mm.
God is the priority in our lives, and worship is literally like what 2 hours, and that's all we do for an entire week. How is that like too much time? How is that even cultish behavior?
Uh-huh.
I feel like we've lost that very basic foundational understanding that if your belief in God, your religion, the faith that you have is the ultimate priority that leads to me being a good family member or a good worker, you would think that, yeah, spend more time where they teach you how to be a good worker. Spend more time where they teach you how to be a good family member. Instead of like, you should spend more time with family or you should spend more time at work. And so people, even in my workplace, when I was working, they knew on Fridays that I left early, and they're like, "Wow, Eugene, you're leaving early when this is like sometimes it's going to be the nicest times in the stock market. It's around like 4, and then you're gonna leave there. That's where the most movement happens." I was like, "Yeah, actually, I have commitments that I want to do, and since you're not paying me by the hour, then I can basically leave whenever I want."
Right.
And so I used to do that because that was my priority, was going to this church meeting on Friday. And so I needed to leave by 4 so I could get there by 6 or whatever it was. Um, and so those are things that, we get to see play out in people's lives. And then when people see how you act, they see your priority, and then they see who you worship. They can hate you. They can disagree with you. They're like, well, I don't need to do that to worship God. I believe in God and I don't spend 24/7 at church. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, you believe in God. So how much time do you spend at church? Well, sometimes I miss a Sunday. He's like, oh, you miss a Sunday, then why do you miss a Sunday if God is a priority?
Yeah.
When he commands us to worship him. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't need to worship him on Sunday, do I? It's like, well, where do you see that explicitly in the Bible where you don't have to gather to worship? It is pretty explicit in the Bible that we need to gather and worship.
Yeah.
And so those are like challenges that people give us, but it's like it's not welcomed when it's reciprocated.
Yeah.
So I feel like for a lot of people in our church, they just kind of take it when their family members or workplaces say like snide comments like that. But yeah, I think we should learn how to defend ourselves, because by telling people what our priorities are and showing people what our priorities are, we're trying to show them that this is what we really believe to be important. This is what we're really believing is going to lead to eternity anyway.
Yeah.
And so I hope no one thinks that by spending like 4 hours a week in church in total, that they're spending too much time at church. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And for me, I think the dream was maybe we should just set aside Sunday. Don't do any shopping. Don't go grocery shopping.
Yeah.
It's not family time for you. You could do family time some other day, right? But it should be God family time
Yeah.
at church. And then you spend, 9 to 5 or 6 or whatever it is at church. Imagine we had something like that where people will be comfortable enough and not tired because people are actually relaxing. People are actually like, you're not really tired during your family gatherings and stuff, right? No one goes, that was so much work. People are genuinely happy.
Yeah.
And so instead of mandating it though, because mandates suck, but instead of mandating it, I just saw a natural inclination and that kind of step toward, the dream that I just talked about. So people are staying longer after Sunday services just because they want to.
Yeah.
They want to hang out. They want to talk. They want to chill. There's food,
Yeah.
we can talk and people stay really late. They stay like almost as long as our worship time is.
Mm.
And so we're closing up. Like if our worship time is from 10 and we end around 11:30, 12, some people are staying till like 2,
Yep.
and so maybe 3 sometimes. Sometimes we do have events. And so those are things that I continually pray about and see what we can do to continue to foster the fellowship of the Holy Spirit because
Mm.
obviously it's pretty evident um, in our church.
After you kind of, or as you were giving this answer, I did a quick calculation, quick maths, big brain. Um, and for the average church goer at our church, at least, um, they would spend maybe 6 hours at church out of a 168-hour week, and that's very small. That's hold on, let me do the quick math. That is 3% of your time, 3.5% of your time.
Yeah, let's bump it up to 10.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just so interesting because people might think, oh, I'm at church all the time. I'm at church on Saturday, on Sunday, on Wednesday, but it's really 3.5% of your entire week.
Well, I mean, it shows you where their priorities are, what they're compartmentalizing. So
Yeah,
if you completely compartmentalize, let's say family, church, work, and there are 3 different areas of your life, then you're not one cohesive person too. You're just like 3 different persons. You gotta change modes and things like that.
yeah,
Hopefully not. Hopefully people recognize in your workplaces and your families you are the same person at church and when you show up in front of them,
yeah.
right? And so you still have this firm belief in God. You still love singing God's praises. You still love praying. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I hope that people will recognize that, you know, Esther has this friend. She is not a Christian.
Mm,
Never went to church growing up. Never was exposed. Once Esther and I got married, and then she would hang out with her friend. Sometimes I would meet up with her as well. So Esther and I would meet up with her friend, and then before a meal, I would always pray, and then she would be like, "Oh, can you pray for us?" And it's like, "What the?"
mm,
And she's like, "Yeah, it's just comforting
mm.
to hear you pray." And so every time we get together, I pray for the meal, and I
Yeah,
pray for her. I pray for her soul, and hopefully she comes to our church. Like you need to be consistent throughout your life, and that's
yeah,
something that God has even been teaching me and humbling me about. I'm not saying I'm going to force prayers down to people, right? Even if they
right.
don't want it, but it's surprising to see that we immediately want to compartmentalize and separate our church life from every other life. So it's
Mm,
like I spend too much time at church, right?
yeah,
As if it's something completely separated from the rest of our lives. I think that's concerning and that's troublesome. It should all be connected. You should be one person, and that should be, that is a saint of God. You're a
yeah,
holy priesthood, a royal priesthood, right? And
yeah.
so that's what you need to be, someone representing God and Jesus in your life wherever you go.
Thank you for that, Pastor Eugene. I hope that this has been an encouragement as we are coming home from work or going to work, actually, depending on when this podcast comes out. Monday morning every week. Um, I wanted to move into a current event, and you better believe it, we have a new jingle. We actually have a couple different ones. We've been getting feedback from our people with the jingle that we have, and so we have more jingles too. We're gonna play different options, and maybe we'll even have a vote. Which jingle do you like best, and we'll use that one moving forward. However, we will be going to a time of current events, and here is the jingle. Today, for our current events, there is something that is happening in the Supreme Court as of, I believe, last week, and it is regarding abortion. And I believe the Mississippi law regarding abortion. Could you just kind of walk us through what is happening just so that we are aware as Christians and aware of how we should be viewing this biblically?
Yeah, I think yesterday So today is the 2nd. So on the 1st,
of December. Yeah.
they heard opening arguments for both Dobbs and Jackson. So the case is called Dobbs versus Jackson
Hmm.
Women's Health Organization.
Yeah.
And it's basically, simplified. It's fighting for the state's right to regulate abortion.
Okay.
So you could either you know ban it or I guess open it up, whatever it is, right?
Uh huh.
And so people believe that this is a direct contradiction or a direct opposing kind of if states are allowed to ban abortion, then it's directly opposing the Roe versus Wade decision, right?
Yep.
It's not just Roe versus Wade; it's also Planned Parenthood versus Casey. That one solidified abortion
Mm.
being some kind of right in our country. And so I think it's an important time for us to pray that we move away. I believe, and it could change over time. I don't know. I believe that Mississippi is taking the route of saying states should have the authority
Okay.
to regulate,
Hmm.
abortion.
Hmm.
But I believe that that may be an incomplete case because I don't think states or the federal government should give any right to murder.
Yeah.
Murder is just foundationally wrong, and
Yeah.
abortion is murder. So it's pretty simple in
Hmm.
that sense. So, Sam, could you read the Mississippi Solicitor General Scott Stewart's opening address?
Absolutely. Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey haunt our country. They have no basis in the Constitution. They have no home in our history or traditions. They've damaged the democratic process. They poisoned the law. They've choked off compromise. For 50 years, they've kept this court at the center of a political battle that it can never resolve. And 50 years on, they stand alone. Nowhere else does this court recognize a right to end a human life.
Yeah, so right from the get go, he's pulling no punches. And he's saying that the court is the one that's made abortion into a political issue.
Yeah.
And so there's no way for them to remedy it. They need to just step out of it.
Mm.
And so that's his argument is give it back to the states, let the states decide. So for 50 years that they've allowed this systematic killing of babies because we've been fooling our population, especially our women, that you should every woman should have the right to kill their own baby
Hmm.
whenever they want to, for whatever reasons. There's a plethora of reasons. Like I think there's this whole argument now, like the babies aren't actual humans; they're parasites because they depend on you for life.
Mm.
Um, that's not true,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, like even babies out of the womb depend on you for life.
Yeah,
You're
that's
not
true.
allowed to kill the baby.
Right.
You're just not allowed to take a human life, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and so, yeah, that's one of the cases. I think that's one of the like cases that you're trying to make is that it should go to states.
Yeah.
Constitutionally speaking, though, states should have more power than the federal government. Federal government can't dictate like laws that will go all the way into the states. That's not how our system. That's not how our union was set up.
Mm.
So each state should have its own rights, its own laws set up. And that's why this abortion law is crazy because from the bench, so from the Supreme Court bench, um, yeah, from this judicial bench, they made laws, which is not their role. So
Hmm.
they made this law, which was not a law, from the judicial bench, and that's why Roe versus Wade is so intriguing because for 50 years, um, Congress never made that law either. Congress, who makes laws for the whole country, right?
Yeah.
Never made that law either because Congress can never make that law. It's just not something that Congress can do. So the Supreme Court took it on themselves in 1973, which is so long. You think it's so long ago, right?
Yeah.
To do that. But I think I think we're at a place where the states believe that they have successfully brainwashed our youth into thinking that abortion is now women's rights. And if you see the activists out there, I think they really truly believe that abortion is their right, that they can take a life that's in their womb anytime for whatever reason they want, anytime they want, right?
Mm.
Um, which is not the case, right? Life is given by God. Life is God's. So even if the state said you could kill a baby, you can't kill a baby because the life is not the state's.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so you can't do that anyway.
Thank you for that update. And we'll keep you updated as this case progresses. Perhaps stuff will happen, after we record and before we release. And so we'll keep you guys updated on just what is happening in this Supreme Court case. We thank you for listening to this episode of the Dear Church podcast. Join us next week as we will be talking about two questions that have been asked many, many times to Christians all over the world. And those are, how do we know Christianity is the right religion? And how can a good God allow suffering? These are pretty big questions that have been asked to many Christians. Also, we'll be talking about more topics concerning Christian liberty, topics such as cohabitation, swearing, dancing. We have a staff member that is very proclaims to be proficient in dancing. But we'll be talking about him, but not him. We'll be talking about dancing, and then also violent video games. These are all just different, smaller topics, but I thought stuff that people may have questions concerning. So we'll be talking about that next week. Can't wait. We hope and pray that this has been a blessing in your ears. As always, and until the end of time, we love you. We miss you.
Bye.
Bye.